Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the inaugural Cultural Centre Feasibility Task Force meeting, this date, September 19th, 2023. And I'd like to welcome everyone in attendance today. My name is Donna Goodwin. I'm the Economic Development Officer, Arts and Culture for the City of Kawartha Lakes and Recording Secretary for the Cultural Centre Feasibility Task Force. According to the committee's terms of reference, the first meeting of the Cultural Centre Feasibility Task Force of the year, its first order of business is to appoint a chairperson to conduct today's meetings and future meetings for the year. The role of the chairperson includes the responsibility to chair the meeting, ensuring the meeting is conducted as listed on the agenda, or by resolution, if it's decided to move an item onto the agenda. Ensuring meetings are conducted according to the Municipal Act and the city's procedural bylaw. Calling for pecuniary interest when listed on agenda, noting that it's up to the individual committee member to determine whether or not they do actually have a pecuniary interest. Ensuring all members of the committee, visiting staff, and members of the public are treated with respect. Once the chairperson has been appointed, they actually will conduct the appointment of the vice chair of the committee, who will serve as chairperson in absence of the chair. I will now call on the members of the committee 3 times for nominations for the position of chair. Okay. So firstly, I call upon the members of the committee to put forward a nomination for position of chair. Councillor Smeaton.
Yeah, I'd like to put forward, sorry, well, it's loud today. I'd like to nominate David Morrison for the role of chair.
Okay. Do you consent to the nomination? Okay. I call on the members of the committee a second time for a nomination for position of chair. I call on the members of the committee a third and final time for the position of chair. Okay, I declare that David Morrison is appointed by acclamation as chair of the Cultural Centre Feasibility Task Force. Please come forward and assume your position as chair and conduct the meeting, including the appointment of the vice chair.
Right, and that works. And just to get the lay of the land, is this the kind of thing where one will cut out when another cuts in, or just thinking of back and forth?
Yeah, so what I've been told, if there's more than 3, you'll start to get feedback.
Right.
And so sometimes you can use the reply button and it'll show your name is in the queue to speak next, and so the chair can call on you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. All right, so moving on. Firstly, I call upon the members, and I'm just reading from the official script, members of the committee to put forward a nomination for the position of vice chair. That's once. Second time. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. And through you, Chair. I would at this time like to nominate Christina.
And Christina, do you accept that nomination? Okay. And second time I put forward, call on the members of the committee a second time for a nomination for the position of vice chair. And third time, I'm sorry, you're going to have to be really, really obvious with gestures. Okay, and please help me out if you see a gesture that I miss. Please bring it to my attention. Okay. Third and final time, call on the members of the committee for the position of vice chair. Seeing none, congratulations. Christina, you are the vice chair. Wonderful.
Okay.
All right. So I guess we carry on with the agenda. There we go. Thank you very much. And item 1.3, the orientation package. How would you like to proceed with that?
It can be entered into the minutes that there is an orientation package that will be part of the presentation under new business.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there specific highlights or specific things that you would like to bring to our attention about this package?
I have a presentation that
Beautiful.
we can go through. Part of it is in your binder that you've been given here, and then going forward, if you want to put your agendas and any other confirmation or correspondence or whichever for the unit. So if you look to your screens, this is the to adopt the agenda.
Yeah, sorry. Can we change the order of and bring that orientation package in after we adopt the agenda?
Yep.
Okay. So I guess the agenda is in front of everybody. If you care to take a look, if there's anything that you'd like to see changed, feel free to say something. If not, is there somebody who can put the approval of the agenda forward? Tracy, thank you very much. And do we have a seconder for that? Christina. And all those in favor? Thank you very much. And so the agenda is adopted as it stands. Thank you. Having said that, I'm out of practice, obviously, because I should have made a point of making that change before we adopted it, but we did it verbally, so do we call that flying by the seat of the pants?
That's right.
Okay, so we will do the declaration of pecuniary interest right off the top, because I think that's an important one. Okay, so first of all, is everybody clear what the declaration of pecuniary interest involves? Because if there's any question, we just want to make sure that it's clear. Okay, and that being said, is there anybody who feels that they should declare that? And I'm seeing none, nobody. Thank you very much. So that takes care of item 3. Item 4, adoption of the minutes from previous meeting, is a pretty easy one to take care of, I think, because there aren't any. Deputations, I assume that today there are none. Thank you very much. And correspondence, do we actually have any correspondence?
Not today, I don't.
Okay. And so right under new business, is there anything that anyone would like to add? Well, we should have done that, shouldn't we? How about we put the orientation package there? Is that okay, folks? Everybody's okay? Feel free to, point me in the right direction if I go sideways. I know you'll do that. Thank you. So, okay, if we can have the presentation, that'd be great. Thanks.
All right. So this orientation package also includes the terms of reference, which is included in your binder. So for the Cultural Center Feasibility Task Force new members orientation, come on. Of course, we'd like to welcome you today to this orientation session and to the task force meeting room. We're going to go over task force procedures, the terms of reference with objectives, and we're update on work completed in preparation for phase 2, which includes a review of the committee of the whole phase 1 presentation, budget and administrative work that's been done by council and staff in the interim, and also Green Municipal Fund opportunity and action information. For procedures, the Cultural Center Feasibility Task Force follows the city's operation procedure for council-appointed committees and task force. Committees, boards, and task force policy outlines the city's general policies regarding general procedures, appointments, and conduct of the committee members. And this policy applies to all council-appointed committee, board, and task force members.
Excuse me, Donna.
Oh, it's not switching?
Nothing is coming up on the screens the folks are looking at. I noticed it's coming up on your screen there.
Okay, take two. So I've already actually verbally said this to you, but the orientation package for today includes the task force procedures, terms of reference with objectives, update on work completed in preparation for phase 2, the review of council's committee of the whole phase 1 presentation, budget administrative work by council and staff, and Green Municipal Fund opportunity and action. So the task force follows the city's operations procedures for council-appointed committees and task force. Committee, board, and task force policy outlines the city general policies regarding general procedures, appointments, and conduct of its committee members. The policy applies to all council-appointed committees, boards, task force members. It was attached to the meeting request for your review. This presentation highlights the general sort of universal information for all task force members. Use the policy as a reference for specific queries, or come to me and we can always work with clerks if you have any questions. So in the terms of reference, it actually outlines the scope of work for the task force for the next, I guess, 15, 16 months. Every committee and council or task force is required to complete a work plan at their first meeting. So this is the review of that scope of work and sort of a reinforcement that the Cultural Center Feasibility Task Force is established for the municipality to share the results of phase 1 feasibility study findings, to inform further site exploration, selection, and feasibility analysis, to review refined operating, resource, and capital cost estimates presented in the phase 1 report, inform a fundraising and financing strategy, receive and assess recommendations for a preferred operating model and site location for the Cultural Center for Kawartha Lakes. Terms of reference, so general activities of a task force, to provide information, contacts, suggestions to ensure a fulsome stakeholder and public consultation to gather information related to the tasks as outlined, to provide written feedback to the recommendations related to the task force as outlined, to make recommendations to council and staff on the study recommendations received from the consultants at the end of the project, to make recommendations to council and staff on strategy, policies, and various issues to achieve council's strategic priorities related to the task force established scope of work as defined in the terms of reference. The several positions on the task force which undertake specific roles are chair and vice chair, which you have appointed here today. Staff liaison is myself. And of course, the chair and vice chair positions are elected at the first task force meeting. So task force member term and responsibilities. Members serve on the Cultural Center Task Force until December 31st, 2024. Document was shared as information when confirming your appointments. The terms of reference was attached to the email and also referenced here as the first meeting or inaugural meeting. For insurance and liability, the activities of the task force are covered under the city's insurance policy. Task force members must ensure that any commitments they make with regard to task force activities are in accordance with the task force work plan, have been approved by the task force to ensure that they are covered under the city's insurance policy. All activities and events must follow risk management best practices and adhere to all city policies and procedures to mitigate risk and liability. Individual members of the task force are not entitled to benefits with regard to insurance, including WSIB coverage, because they are volunteers. Conflict of interest. Task force members need to be aware of potential conflicts of interest with regards to the activities of the task force. It is the responsibility of members to declare any pecuniary interest in an item on the agenda where there may be a perceived or actual conflict of interest. Task force members should declare pecuniary interest when an agenda item impacts a property the member owns, full or in part, or in which they have a financial interest, could result in financial gain or loss for the member, and has financial or property implications for an immediate family member. Accountability and transparency. All city task forces must commit to being accountable and transparent in their activities. This includes accurate record keeping and documentation of activities, ensuring public access to meetings, fulfilling legislative requirements, transparent use of municipal funds, and annual reporting. Closed sessions are not allowed to be held by task force. The code of conduct that applies. The Code of Conduct and Ethics sets expectations for acceptable behavior, conduct, and actions for appointees of Kawartha Lakes committees, boards, and task forces. Members shall take no part in discussions where there's a conflict of interest, not solicit or receive gifts or benefits as a result of their position on the task force, not use information acquired for personal advantage, not speak on behalf of the task force or city without authorization, shall not speak disrespectfully or negatively regarding council decisions, conduct themselves with decorum, and be respectful of staff and the public. Freedom of information. Cultural Center Feasibility Task Force records are subject to freedom of information requests for MFIPA. In general, all documents created by and for the task force are public documents and freely available on the city's website. Please be aware that your communication as part of the task force and with staff is subject to MFIPA. People know what MFIPA stands for? Freedom of information? Okay, and the M is the municipal. Accessibility training is mandatory for all task force members. The city is committed to providing service that is accessible to all persons. This includes events, activities, communications that are developed by the task force. You should be aware of the city's accessibility policy and customer service standards. And certainly I can get that to anybody that's on the task force. It's also on our website. If you require accessible modifications yourself to participate fully in the task force, please inform staff so we can work with you to ensure that meetings, communication, information are all accessible. Minutes and agendas. They are available on the city's website. A link to the agenda for the next meeting is sent out usually the Friday prior to the meeting. In our task force document, it actually is a minimum of 3 business days, but we try to have it up to 10. The task force uses a report format that's for meetings where the agenda includes formal reports on various topics. These reports are included in the agenda. Reports are used to introduce new items to the task force and to bring back information to the task force as requested. Members can raise other points they would like to discuss under other business at the end of the meeting. The meeting format, meeting follow a standard format, call to order, adoption of agenda, declaration of pecuniary interest. Then there's an adoption of previous minutes, deputations and presentations, correspondence, new business, next meeting, and adjournment. Task force will be making recommendations that require council approval. These are presented to council under the cover of a staff report. Task force passes recommendations to forward to council. Staff write report, which includes background information and the task force's recommendation. Staff present the report to the committee of the whole, which makes a decision to the recommendation. A decision is considered at the next regular council meeting. Staff report back to the task force on council's decision. And there we go.
Very much.
Okay.
So just at this point, I guess it's fair to ask if anybody has any questions about what we've heard so far. None? If I may, just one question. When it comes to a declaration of conflict, you know, a person believes that they would like to declare a conflict of interest for a specific item in an agenda. What's your regular routine for that? Are you comfortable with them just moving back from the table and not participating? Or is it a matter of them stepping out of the room? I just want to be sure that, sure.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Great question. And if we're not to be able to go into closed as a task force, so they do not have to, remove themselves from the room, but they remove themselves from the discussion or if there's any, voting at that time. And even as you're moving through an agenda, sometimes a pecuniary interest will surface, and you can declare it at any time.
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear so people felt comfortable about, because sometimes totally unexpected, something comes up and it just sort of hits you. Oh, yeah. So that's great. Thank you. Any other questions about what we've heard so far? No? Okay. So the second half of the binder there, we would love to hear.
Okay. So we may have to get Sarah back.
Sorry, Eric?
Or get Zoe back.
Tracy?
We can move to receive the first presentation.
Well, I'd be very happy to. Okay. So it's so moved. And Eric, are you seconding that? Okay. All in favor that we accept that report as delivered? And okay. Thank you. Good to know. Thank you very much. So I guess we will ask, please, for the part about the work completed in preparation.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it doesn't seem to have been attached. Oh, there's Sarah there. Sarah's like a fantastic part of our clerks department. You will be seeing her probably often. This one here. It's not there though. So if I email it, can I do it, or is it too late?
If you email it to me, we may just need to take just
Council generic?
to me, personally, to myself.
And Sarah, while you're here.
Yes.
Is it possible to get what's on those screens on that screen?
This?
Is that an easy thing to do?
We're not able to because that's set for our Zoom participation,
Okay,
but I can get you a printed copy. That way you don't have to turn to look.
okay. That, any time that something is going up there, I would
Okay.
appreciate that.
Nope, we do that for council, so that's certainly
Thank
something we can do.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
It's gone, I sent it to you. Okay. There we go. Yeah, when we're on like staff or whoever is waiting, I guess that's where we show up. Yeah, when we're doing Zoom or, yeah. And this is what YouTube shows. Yeah.
Is there a recording made of the live presentation too? So
It's
people
happening
can
right now.
access it anytime on. Great.
Yeah, and people are watching now.
Sure. Right,
Yeah.
yeah, which is wonderful. Good.
Yeah, I think that Zoe, another staff person, said that there were 2 logged on when we started. So that's great.
And if when we proceed, if one of our members is not there, then they will be in the room not there.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that is an option as well.
So
right,
one-
participation.
The one question that I will ask, how important is it for us to use our microphones as far as what's going out there? I would assume it's important.
They can't hear us.
Right. Oh. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
And you
Good
have
to
your
know,
microphone
because
on with
those of us that are used to using the teacher voice thing, it still doesn't do it. All right, very good. So are we good to move on?
Yeah, Sarah was up for. You never know with technology, because I have. Thanks, Sarah. That's great. Okay. So the phase 1 of the Cultural Center Feasibility Task Force was from 2021 to 2022. It originally was struck in 2020, but because of the pandemic, it was deferred or delayed by the year. Partnership between the municipality and the Kawartha Lake Arts Council and the Kawartha Lakes Arts and Heritage and Culture Network. So this was the final presentation that was given based on complete year RFP process where consultants were hired. This is the final presentation to Committee of the Whole, which then went towards Council. And so it provides a really great overview of who participated, what the results were, and next steps. So the council, I don't know what that is, I'm gonna get rid of that. Council support and structure. So council struck a task force to shepherd the study and report back to council on June of 2022. Members were Susan Taylor as representative of the Kawartha Lake Arts Council. Athol Hart was the representative for the Kawartha Lakes Culture and Heritage Network. Patrick Murphy was a community member at large, Barbara Doyle, community member at large, Councillor Tracy Richardson, and Councillor Kathleen Seymour-Fagan. There were also 2 former members, Beverly Jeeves, who originally was the Kawartha Lakes Culture and Heritage Network representative, and Diane Lister, who was part of the Creative Economy representative. And the recording secretary for the task force and project manager of the study through economic development. And there was an interdepartmental technical team, which we called a TAC, of staff as support. So the study was found on the municipal facility analysis and master planning framework. The framework was engaged to ensure that the analysis was based on current demand and future demand to plan and manage for that change. The findings presented reflected the process and gave valuable information that has informed these next steps. So the facilities analysis and master planning framework is a framework that our building and property use, our asset management uses, and it sort of informs all kind of like municipal corporate structure and corporate assets. As background, a request for proposal was to conduct a cultural center feasibility study was issued in July of 2021. Norda City and GIMO Architects were the successful consultants, and the study was completed between September of 2021 and May of 2022. So this is their presentation. So the first part there was just sort of the introductory to the committee of the whole by staff. And then this was actually the presentation that they provided. So the overall conclusions were that the Kawartha Lakes requires a new cultural center to support a range of community and culture sector space and programming needs. Design and construction should follow study recommendations. The City of Kawartha Lakes requires a new archive and curatorial facility. This facility must accommodate the size requirements and features as outlined in the study. The hub and spoke model holds some promise to support cultural programming and services, but requires further exploration and definition. Given these needs, there's an opportunity for a new facility to be built that combines both functions and allows for the creation of transformational cultural infrastructure, a cultural center or hub. No specific site was identified as feasible at the time, mostly due to size requirements. However, the location analysis provides insights into key factors that should be further considered to identify a site in the future. So the RFP was structured around municipally owned buildings, and so that was what was looked at. So one of the findings was that there was not a current municipal stock, there wasn't a building that was feasible or available for this type of facility. So the vision for the cultural center, Kawartha Lakes Cultural Center will be a facility that responds to the space needs reported by the city and the cultural sector. The center would aim to set in place a viable operating model that invites Kawartha Lakes cultural organizations and artists to share space and programming assets. The center would celebrate Kawartha Lakes' rich culture and heritage assets and support greater public access to those assets, house and showcase cultural assets and content of its partners as desired in a space that is fit for purpose for long-term care and management. Provide support to the broader cultural and creative sector, which is seeking affordable and accessible yet professional space to create and practice, and respond effectively to the community's culture and heritage uses. Location analysis, GIMO, which was the architectural firm of the partnership, for the study began by investigating over 50 municipal sites and assets. Through assessment of existing conditions and programming, facility availability, site visits, and the response from public consultation that better defined location needs, the list was narrowed. A result of this process is a recommendation on a feasibility size range with 2 scales options for the cultural hub, a medium and a large. No specific site was identified as feasible at the time. However, location analysis provides insights into key factors that should further be considered to identify a site in the future. Regardless of which scale, medium or large, is selected for the cultural center, a key component will be establishing the center as a place that can connect with other existing cultural facilities and resources within Kawartha Lakes. Design standards and guidelines were provided, and they have been developed for following key topics: supporting culture through design excellence, leverage heritage for placemaking, social, economic, and environmental sustainability, designing with Indigenous communities, archive and collection storage. regardless of the size, scale, construction method, and final location selected. The design of the cultural hub should align with these guidelines detailed within the study. Governance priorities and model was seek balanced municipal and community input in future stages, build trust, i.e. through via a shared service model, ensure affordable access, represent and amplify existing cultural destinations and attractions, identify partnerships, and accommodate future growth. So the next steps, which you'll see is the work plan for the terms of reference, city to share the results of the study, undertake further site exploration, selection, and feasibility analysis, refine operating and capital cost estimates presented in the report, identify and initiate a fundraising and financing strategy, design and award RFP for full architectural services. So the last one is not in the terms of reference for this because we design and award RFP for full architectural services would be a phase 3 or a phase 4 activity. And in this phase 1, the task force and staff wanted to ensure that it was public record that it was recommended to go through to the architectural stage. But for phase 2, we sort of stop at the find a site, check out the models, refine costs, refine, and to move forward into that phase 3. And then the appendices, the project overview, the phase 1 was research, so review planning, facility, policy context, identify regional hubs and comparables, conduct demographic analysis. Phase 2 was consultations, so they designed and deployed surveys for the public and the cultural sector. They conducted interviews, roundtables, meetings, synthesized survey consultation results, and produced an interim report at that time. Phase 3 was developing the service level standards plan and construction cost range, develop draft budget for operational. Phase 4 was recommendation and reporting, so draft feasibility study, financials and next steps, revise and finalize feasibility study report, and then present to the committee of the whole. So the full report is available. It's online. I can also provide it so you can have it in your package for the task force. These are the size and scale recommendations that were provided. So as earlier stated, it was 1 medium, 1 large. So the medium scale was 25,000 to 45,600. The large was 37,100 to 65,700 square feet. And this was some of the sort of must have, should have, could have. So they had a process that they used called a Moscow. And through the public consultation, through consultation with the other cultural sector partners, with CLAC, with CAN, with internal needs of the municipality, future growth, these are sort of the suggestions that emerged. The construction cost estimates. So the acronym that's in the 4th column, the estimated potential CCSF, so that's the Cultural Spaces Fund, which is run by the federal government, and I'll be providing a little bit of an update in the next few minutes about that. And the preliminary conclusion, a larger center with more programming requires a much higher capital investment upfront, higher annual operating costs, yet it may be more commercially viable than a smaller facility with fewer programming options and less revenue. These are the business models that are under consideration. A potential earned revenue source, potential other revenue source, expenditure category examples, and operating income by year 5. And then, of course, open for questions and discussion.
Yes.
Sorry. On the last page there in the operating income by year 5, it appears that the medium scale facility is losing $460,000 a year, where the large scale is losing less. So the large scale facility would be generating more income, thus losing less. So is that figure basically looking at what the burden on the taxpayers of the city of Kawartha Lakes would be having to pick up at the end of the year?
Well, I would assume that would be one, that would be one option. That's not the only option, certainly. No. And that is one, when you look at the, if you look at your terms of reference and the work plan, one of the actionable items for the task force is to look at those refined costs and try to make recommendations on the optimal operating model. There are, I think there's 4 or 5 operating models that they looked at. So they didn't put forward an operating model and the cost structure. There's, the actual report is quite substantial, and a lot of that detail is in that their overall study. So
ultimately, we should be trying to achieve a number of 0.
I would think that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Tracy.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just a quick question to Donna. Okay. Just maybe to flesh out, maybe define a little more, maybe, explain the role of this committee versus the role of what the consultants will be doing in this phase.
Yeah. So the role of the task force is to bring your individual expertise and your individual expertise and be able to actually critically analyze what the consultants are bringing forward. So it's unlike other working groups that we've been on before, where you roll up your sleeves and you're actually getting the data. The task force acts as a mediator between council and the staff and consultant and the public outreach and the consultation, everything that works below. So it's with a critical eye and bringing forward the background that you have, and also bringing forward suggestions. It's a two-way valve. So you're including your knowledge of the sector in at the beginning when the consultants are first brought on board and they're looking for to develop their own work plan, and you feed into that how your background allows. And then on the flip side, when they come back with their interim reports, when they come back with their questions, when they come back with their work plan, you look at it and think, that does hit the mark. No, I think they're off base. No, I think maybe you should, merge those two things, or what about this? Or I remember someone else mentioned that. And so it's that sort of two-way valve, that go between. The consultants themselves work with staff, and it's, that sort of technical advisory committee that we had, that technical team from I think there were 7 or 8 different departments that were part of that. It's also a way for the consultant to gather information with that larger view, and also from that municipal sort of budget perspective. Yes.
Lori.
There are a few people that I've never met on this task force. I'm wondering if either you could highlight the specific role of our individual contributions, or each person can introduce themselves.
Yeah, we were just saying that we'd take some time and go around, because I think it's important that we all know who each other, because I do notice that both Tracy and Pat were involved in this along the road, so you're going to be great resources for us, I would think, as we move forward. But aside from that, just getting to know who everybody is and why they've chosen to be here and what they can help us with, I think is important.
Yeah, can we finish the,
Yes, that's what I was
Formal?
going to ask. If we can get through this part, then we'll take some time and dedicate it to that.
okay, perfect, yeah.
Tim?
Just further to Pat's question, is the goal here that the operating income year 5 and beyond would be zero? Would the expectation be that the city, after building such a center, would no longer be financially involved in the promotion of the arts within the community? Okay. And I don't know whether I misinterpreted your question or not.
It wasn't so much a question as just to point out that the study showed that a large-scale operation potentially is more feasible financially. My personal opinion would be that a model like our fitness center or an aquatorium, which is a municipal property, is not expected to be profitable. It will forever be funded by tax dollars to fill a need in the community. I see that as a similar financing model, but I'm only speaking for myself.
Does that help, Tim? Yeah? Okay, Lori?
Perhaps this is a related question. Are the should-haves and must-haves determined? Do we assume that? Because obviously the must-haves are not revenue generators, where the should-haves or the nice-to-haves are. So is that, is what is included in a medium scale already determined? Is that how we move forward?
No.
Okay.
That's a really good question, though, because that's a reality. There's a difference between those things.
Well, if I may, I have a related question. On the page 2, it says that a new facility would combine both functions of a archive and a cultural center. Is that already a conclusion? Because the focus of the municipal building stock was on a combined purpose. So I'm wondering if at this juncture that's, foregone conclusion, or was there any look at separating those combined purposes and looking at those building stock?
Can somebody speak to that?
Is that okay with you, though?
Sure.
Eric?
You sure? Through you, Mr. Chair, I just think this is a perfect segue to something that I was hoping to have a quick say to, and that is that this is something that Deputy Mayor Richardson and I have talked about on other committees. This is a perfect time to mention just how important it'll be to each agenda item to know where we're going specifically, and at the end of that meeting have achieved it, and a clear-cut design as to what we're trying to accomplish that moment. And one thing that I think is going to be difficult about any committee, this one especially, is we have the potential to get ahead of, maybe a fourth step where we haven't really answered the first. And I don't mean that as a critique. I see, we're excited and there's an evolution. So the first thing to attack is the site exploration, selection, and feasibility. And to answer the question asked is, until we know what we're doing, whether it's hub and spoke, whether it's one big building, whether it's a medium building, we can't answer the question about the archive situation, because if we choose the large scale building, well then perhaps that will all be in one building. If this group in, let's give ourselves 4 to 6 months, we've decided that through staff recommendations back, we have these buildings, we're all going, oh, that's smart, one in Bobcage and one in Fenland, a big hub, whatever this group decides it's going to, we'll see it start taking form. I think then that question will be, and the archive situation now fits in here. Maybe, what do you think? Like, those conversations will start to evolve. I would say, my feeling was that particular question is one of many that there's a reason for the order, in my mind, just my say, that we've shared, number one, we've shared the results of the phase 1 feasibility to inform further site exploration, selection, and feasibility analysis. If that order were kept, I'm not saying it has to be, but were it to be, I think the logical progressions of a lot of the questions are going to reveal themselves. So the whole medium versus large, for example, as Pat Murphy was mentioning, there's significant economical possible gains, arguably, for a large facility. You would also notice, if I'm not mistaken, in the funding from the federal government is triple. It starts to triple when you get into large versus medium. I think it was 4.1 million and came to 12. For the large. There's a lot of those things I think will be in, like, this is good. I'm excited about this. This to me is shaping the next meeting, the next agenda. These are the questions to go, okay, yeah, that fits into number 2 or not yet. Those are just if that makes sense the way I'm wording it. Does that make sense the way I'm wording it?
Yeah.
My understanding, specifically about your question about the archive, I believe the municipality has a responsibility to have an archive. They don't have a responsibility to have a cultural center. So the need was identified across the board throughout the city with all of the important parties that we need to have an archive for our properties to look after them. So if we can combine, then there is some cost savings on both sides. So they'll both be municipal funded, but one is serving the arts community and one is serving the responsibility to have a municipal archive for all other aspects.
Through you, Chair, if I can just add to that, Pat's bang on. So the economies of scale, it was only through, so the original phase 1 began, and the whole discussion began because of CLAC and CAN, like the Kawartha Arts Network, no, Kawartha Arts and Heritage, Arts, Culture and Heritage Network. They came forward in like 2017 or 2018 and asked the municipality to partner to actually explore the feasibility of this cultural center, hub and spoke, one area, whichever. It was through the community coming forward, and Pat was a big part of that. And it was amazing actually, because it was through that exploration that happened in phase 1 that it came to light that the archive its building itself it's already through its half-life of its own existing. It is bursting at the seams. We do have a responsibility to have an archive, and we actually are unable to fill it completely, the responsibility, because other archives, when you walk in, there's actually a place where you can actually do research. There's somebody at the counter that says, how can I help you? And the researcher, the resident, whoever it is saying, oh, I'd like the role for my property, or I'm looking for X document. There's supposed to be a spot that's community access, public, shared space. Within the cultural center feasibility study too, there's a discussion about actually having shared curatorial space with the other museums that are in the community. Some of them have I'm sure all of them, but some of them have microfiche that should be stored at 2 degrees Celsius. But their facilities aren't purpose-built. So there is some need in the community that also work, like the synergies of building a new archive to house all of that public facing and more storage and climate controlled, actually also supports the other museums, the other cultural organizations that we have. A lot of the information from the feasibility study for phase 1 was just sort of fleshing out what the community knew that were holes in the service provision, fleshed out kind of future need, discussed that hub and spoke model so that you would still have your hub, but then you would have your outline. But nothing was decided in the sense of, oh, that building is X or this building is Y. Nothing was decided whether that shared space is financial, physical, programming, like oversight. There's all of that is what phase 2 is hoping to actually cement. Same with the site. You know, the municipality had 385 buildings. That was what the envelope was. GIMO got it down to 50, then they actually went down to 8 and did fairly detailed, fairly impactful kind of modeling, adding additions, underground parking. It's all in the report, and they came back and said that for what the Moscow showed that must have, should have, could have, there wasn't a building or a building footprint that could do it. So that was great. Great information to know out of all of that building stock. That's a no. So now with phase 2, it could be greenfield, it could be grayfield, it could be brownfield, it could be partnerships with other parapublic organizations, right? School board, college. Like we found out a lot of what we couldn't do, which was actually fantastic because then it narrows the sort of nebulous what if and actually allows to really target. So now we know we don't have a building stock municipally owned that we could just create. So some of your questions are fantastic, and that's exactly what we're hoping by December of 2024. That again, that next layer of analysis and refinement and supposition and feedback loops with community members and such, that we actually get down to the point where we can say, okay, this is what we want, this is what we need, and this is how we're going to get there. Yeah. Okay.
Wow, thank you. This is pretty exciting, actually. You know, I think what hits me is that we're so lucky because with your background and the knowledge that you're bringing and the background that you folks have so far and the questions that we're asking, this is going to be a perfect combination because it'll help everybody. For people like me, I mean, I think I'm going to have to do a really deep dive into that report. And I'm just wondering, is it possible, I know it's on you can access it through the website, right? Is it possible just to email us the link so that it's easy for us all to find, just to save us the hunting? And then I think spending some time with that will be really useful. Yes, Christina.
I did review that report prior, but I may have missed it. I'm just seeking some clarification on the art gallery and whether or not the intention for that space is for the Kawartha Lakes Art Gallery to move into it, given that they're already in a municipal space, or if that's intended to be a completely separate art gallery.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Chair, that again is a big question mark. I think that when they were modeling what is in a sort of typical or from the feedback, kind of, they were talking about black box, right? They were talking about gallery, talking about curatorial space, commercial kitchen. The needs of the community are really varied, but a lot of it is sort of that incubation space. It's not a 450 seat theater, but we have, but research has shown that we have concert bands and we have dance troupes and we have that they need a space to practice. They need a space to, do that, behind the scenes work before they actually go and to do the performance, wherever they perform. Like there's a lot of that. So there's no hard and fast decision that was made other than there's no municipal site, other than we need one. Those were really the two that were like hard and fast decisions that came out of the report. We can't do it on municipal property. We do need one. Oh, and that we do need a new archive and collections facility for a number of reasons.
Pat?
I think that early on in the process to identify both the size and the location is to identify who the end users will be. So if there are large current organizations that will be tenants and main users in the facility, then their input will have to be considered into the location. So I think identifying the list of who, over the next 25 years, will be the main users, whether they're paying a full pop rent as permanent residents in the facility, or occasional users, or their spaces that are being used by multiple different groups at different times. Identifying who the users are is going to lead us to where the location needs to be.
Thank you. Any other questions at this point? None? Okay, is there more that you want to share with us?
The work that's been done between June 2022 and when the task force was struck in June of 2023, just to give you sort of high level on that. So the recommendation that came with this committee of the whole report was for council to approve $100,000 for phase 2. So the special budget meeting of February 28th, 2023, that $100,000 was approved by council and put in for the budget. So the municipality has committed $100,000 for this next phase. As you saw, one of the references was to the Cultural Spaces Fund. And in the larger report, there's a lot more detail. So the consultants recommended that staff investigate Cultural Spaces Fund as well and see if there was some way to leverage the $100,000 of municipal funding that was committed and access additional funding to create the feasibility study where we might actually be able to deal with some of the other things that aren't actually directly defined as next steps. So in April of 2023, Economic Development took a report to council asking to be able to apply to the Green Municipal Fund. So the Green Municipal Fund is a fund that is run by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and they are an arm's length agency that have this contract through the federal government. So I spoke to staff with the Cultural Spaces Fund in December of last year, and there's a shift in the federal government where they made the decision that all funding actually comes through the Green Municipal Fund, even for cultural spaces, and it must be related to a net zero modeling activity. Federal government has made some policy decisions that they will that they fund net zero building, and so if your building isn't net zero, you can kind of put two together and it'll be very difficult to get federal funding. So in April of this year, council agreed, so Economic Development has been working to submit a fund or an application to the Municipal Green Fund. It takes 30 weeks so about 6 months to get a decision for them. So again, council and senior management decided that we lead with our 100,000 and the task force is struck for that 100,000. If we find out in 6 months' time that we did get the Green Municipal Fund money, it's then to model net zero based on the footprint, the site selection, the activities, all the work that is being done right now based on that $100,000 commitment. So it is our hope that we get that money, because then we can model net zero and find out whether it's feasible or not to do a net zero in our community, given the use of the building, the location of the building, the topography of the building, the services that are available in our community, on and on. It's a great thing to find out, because if we can't do net zero, then we know that federal funding for capital is not available, and we don't go down that road, and we don't design for that future opportunity. If it is available, it's been shared that it's much easier to be actually in the queue for capital funding once you go through that feasibility through them. So that's sort of a next step for staff is sort of working behind the scenes, getting that in and having it percolating while this exploration is going on, so that once decisions are made here, we can be at the ready. So that's probably the other update.
Oh, Pat?
On the topic of the $100,000 budget, how exactly is that money spent and how is it accounted for? Are we starting today with 100,000 or have we already spent money on that $100,000 budget?
Oh, no, we haven't spent any.
Okay.
No. It's,
So-
it's for the task force and for the, for the consultants.
So municipal staff and the work that they do on behalf of the task force, when we ask questions for investigation and whatnot, that's not coming out of
Oh,
this
no,
budget?
no, no, no.
Okay, just clarify.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good. Any other questions to do with that? It's a lot of information. Yeah. So I guess for me, I'm thinking forward, because this is bringing up all sorts of questions in my head here, and not necessarily that they'd be appropriate here. So I'm just wondering, for all the people in the committee, if questions occur to us folks as we're traveling along, is there a way that we can share those with each other or with you to move things along? I'm just wondering about, I know we can't discuss things, but I'm thinking if there's an important question that comes up and somebody wants to get some background or something, how do you go about that? And
Yes.
yeah.
We, through you, Chair, great question. We certainly can generate those questions and explore those questions at the next meeting. So we just make them an agenda item, because we have to be very, open, transparent.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about how that all works, so that moving forward, we all know. Is there anything else on the agenda? What do we have here?
We can do our roundtable and people can.
Yes, we'll receive that. So, is there somebody who would like to put that on the table to receive that report? Eric Smeet, thank you very much. And do we have a seconder? Right on. Lori, thank you very much. And all those in favor? Look at this. This is wonderful. And that is carried. Thank you, and thank you very much for reminding us. We'll get into the swing of it very quickly. Thank you very much. And so at this time, I think it would be great if we could go around the table maybe and have everybody introduce themselves. I know a couple of us came in sort of towards the end too, and I didn't know if you had a chance to sort of chat before we got started, but let's take the time right now, and maybe we'll start with Eric Smeeton, because he's right there. And,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
just share whatever, whatever you want. What
Sure.
brings you here? And
Yeah. Okay, well, for me, and thank you, and through you, so my name's Eric Smeeton, for those that don't know me. I guess my part of this table, besides being on council, is really fun, because I know so many people in the arts community. So one of my biggest reasons to run for council was my community involvement, and a significant part of that's been the arts. I've worked with Dave, I've worked with Pat, I've conducted shows at the Academy Theatre, I'm a drummer, I'm a percussionist, music's my love, and I taught music for years and years, often under the tutelage of Mr. Morrison. And so it's really genuine. This is a really exciting committee, because it's one where I get to hopefully have some input as a council member, because ultimately this is coming back to council, but it's an easy, fun committee that I'm very, very excited about. You said it's exciting, and something, that's obvious to me is, and I'll let people speak because that's where we're going around, but this group has a lot of passion and a lot of different passions. So that's going to be the fuel, right? Our creativity, this group is this creativity of this table is going to actually ultimately end result in some form of a cultural center. So that's pretty awesome. And as long as we all respect that we are passionate people and that passion is contagious, it could be really exciting. I was thinking about that last night. Like, this is something that, 50 years from now, people will go, whatever it is that we've kind of helped decide will be that thing. And today, it's not even known what that is. We all have little pieces in our own mind of what we think it might look like. That's human nature, and that's fine. That's what we're going to find out. So I'm really excited to be on this task force, and I consider it a real privilege. It's really fun, and I think when we get to know each other and get to know how we work together, I think it's going to be a very progressive team as well. That's the feeling I get.
I'm just kidding. Thank you. Tracy Richardson, second term, acting deputy mayor right now. For me, the last term of council, this, came around the table as something that we want to explore. I was behind it 100%. I have such a admiration of arts, cultural heritage, and everything else that's embodied in the city of Kawartha Lakes. I've been in the city of Kawartha Lakes my entire life. I like to see us grow and grow in a very positive force, community benefits like this type of project. So for me, it's just, getting to be part of the next phase. And I absolutely agree. It's a very exciting time, and I'm excited to have the different bodies around the table. And, I think there's going to be some amazing dialogue and discussion, and I can feel the energy already in the room, so I'm excited. And, my granddaughter, she's starting music class, so I'm pretty excited, because she lives here in the Kawartha Lakes as well. So you never know. She could be someone in the future that's going to be using that facility. So as I said, I'm excited to have this group around us and see what we get done in the next few months. Thank you.
My name's Pat Murphy, and I've had a long career in the construction business, and I'm ready for retirement. I have a long family background of musicians. My grandfather, my father, a brother of mine, and now my son are career musicians. It's a job. It's not a hobby. And I am a part-time musician. With my background in the arts, and I've been 30 years living in Lindsay, brought up my children here, and for the first, I would say, 15 years here was observing, and I observed a council that was not interested in culture. And about 3 terms back, I think it was Andy Letham's first term when there were still 16 councillors, they had the wherewithal to solicit a study, I would call it, a 10-year cultural master plan. A woman named Deborah Soul presented that to council. She was hired as a contractor to do that report. It identified the need, first of all, for having a arts council, having other organized cultural groups, which was done close to 10 years ago now. With that piece of paper, the Kawartha Lakes Arts Council set up a plan, actually step by step by step by step. How do we get this 10-year cultural master plan implemented in a political organization that had no interest in culture? So we set upon, first of all, to educate our local politicians on culture. And it was amazing that we had in this room under camera councillors saying, I don't even know what the word culture means. So we've gone from there to where we are today with a lot of hard work over the last 7 or 8 years. The first cultural center committee in the Kawartha Lakes Arts Council was 8 years ago when it started. And a needs study was the first step before feasibility study. Feasibility study was going to require some money, and we solicited $50,000 in donation in the community, which showed us that there is a will in the community for those people who can afford to open their checkbooks to see this move forward. At this stage, we've done all of the necessary baby steps in the background to get to the table where we're actually talking about doing something physical. We have the backing of our mayor and council to move forward. A lot of things have changed in the last 15 years. And the city of Kawartha Lakes is about to explode with development. And all of those citizens who are moving from other places are going to expect to have cultural activities. So I'm happy to see everybody here at the table and bringing their expertise to move this forward. It's been a long time coming, and I hope it's not another 10 years before we see shovels in the ground. So pitter patter, let's get at her.
It's really interesting to hear some of your comments about that. To give a bit of my background, I was the executive director of the Lindsay Gallery from 2010 to 2012, and I was just at the beginning of that shift, and there's definitely been an evolution in attitude about the cultural center. When I was with the gallery, I did read a report, and I don't know if the gallery still has it or not, from back, I think it was either the late 70s or early 80s, about the discussion of a cultural center back then. I think they were looking at the site over by Rivera Park at that time. And so there's been an interest from people in the arts community in this for even longer than that, but it has been, I know, due to a lot of hard work over the last little while. To give a little bit more of my background, I also, prior to being the executive director, was an event manager and concert promoter, so working in the arts in that area. And then after working at the art gallery, I moved into philanthropy and now work for a large foundation. So I come from that philanthropic background. So.
Thank you. I'm very thankful for being on this task force. So thank you for selecting me to join such a very interesting group. Unlike most of you, I moved here in 2022. I brought my children, and I'm probably a great example of the growth that's coming to Kawartha Lakes. I had a farm, a seasonal property for 20 years. It's a very common story. So I bring a very different perspective. My background is digital channels from IBM. I'm very technical. I understand social and digital spaces very well. I also have a whole career in advertising strategy, data intelligence, and media, which has been just an awesome place to start when you want to grow something big. And that is my past. I'm grateful that in Kawartha Lakes, I now am the executive director of the Community Foundation, which means I dive very deep in helping community-led efforts raise the funds that they'd like in order to grow. So there's a lot of stars that align. There's one more thing that I raise for you, and I also had my own company in tourism recovery. I have a background in economics, and I helped a lot of destinations recover in the pandemic. And so there's a lot of different ways that I'm looking at this project and looking forward to contributing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Graves. I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank you for selecting me. I've lived in Kawartha Lakes with my family since 2019, and I opened Kawartha Weaving, which is a textile and fiber art studio, and I teach people how to weave, so hand weave on floor looms. And if you know me at all, I'm really passionate about that. And actually this Friday, I will be an international teacher, which I'm very excited about. And you can follow me if you want to know more about that. But if you look that up, then you'll know why this is just so fitting for me to be here. I'm helping another country who has lost those traditions. It's almost extinct from their culture. And I just would never want that to happen here. I'm a member of the Kawartha Handweavers and Spinners. I'm the president of the Ontario Handweavers and Spinners. And I'm here representing all of those people, and I'm excited. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tim Weisner. My family has had a cottage in the Kawartha Lakes for 150 years. My ancient family was from Lindsay. I grew up out west. I grew up in Calgary. I think what we would consider for these discussions, I would be a user or a runner of the eventual space that we would create. I toured for years with ballet companies in Canada, including the Alberta Ballet. I still know more stage doors than main streets of most of the towns in the country, and recognize them as such. I was at the Jack Singer Concert Hall, 2,700-seat concert hall, the sister concert hall to Roy Thompson in Calgary, that I ran the operations there for some time, and was the associate producer at Canadian Stage in Toronto. I now live in the Kawartha Lakes, have a couple of businesses on the main street in Fenelon, including a design company, an art gallery, and a furniture store. I'm also one of the co-founders of the Grove Theatre, lovely little place off in the bush in Fenelon Falls, where we do some plays in the summer. And yeah, I'm excited about how this will materialize. It's great.
Share your mic.
Please.
Hi, my name's Darcy Kennedy. I grew up in the area just around outside of Fenelon, essentially, on one side closer to Bobcaygeon, and then for a while closer to Glenarm. I completed an undergrad at U of T and Sheridan College with a specialist in art and art history, a focus on painting and photography, and a minor in political science. I also did my MFA at the University of Ottawa in painting and interned at the Canada Council for Arts. I've worked at the Toronto Entertainment District Business Improvement Area, doing arts and cultural programming that way. I manage the gallery in Fenelon, so I do all the programming with Tim and Chris and our team there. I also teach painting and drawing and market, I call it professional practices, but I think they call it marketing and portfolio development at Halliburton School of Art. And I also chair the Fenelon Arts Committee. So I'm very excited for this, very obviously passionate about art in my community and about the community in general. I have seen it kind of fluctuate over the years, and I'm very excited about where it's going now, about how there's all these great people coming to the area who are also creative, and then on top of the people that have already been here for so long and are building that as well. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this and hoping that I can add whatever I can add. That will be helpful.
Thank you very much. You're part of the team.
Sure, you can go first, yeah.
Okay, okay. My name's David Morrison, and I was a music teacher here for many, many years. I think I taught it, I don't think, I know, because I remember Fenelon Falls, LCVI, IU Weldon, and then I was a trustee with the Trillium Lakelands Board for 8 years, and ran a few music groups in town. I worked with Kinsman Band for a while, way back in the day, marching band, and then Odyssey Project, and now the Kawartha Lakes Concert Band. So I have 5 children, and they all benefited greatly from this community and the art community within it, dance, music, you name it. they were involved in it, and it's such a hugely important part of who we are in the city of Kawartha Lakes. I'm so happy that I get a chance to be a part of this. So thank you very much to the folks who got us all together. What a great collection of experiences. It's absolutely wonderful, I think. So we'll pass it over to you.
So I know everyone in the room, which is really lucky for me. I'm the staff liaison for the task force, and I'm also the economic development officer for arts and culture. My background is actually, I have a master's in urban planning and cultural planning, and for the last, I always say 20, but I'm sure it is pushing now, probably 25 or even 30 years. I've worked in the provincial, municipal, and nonprofit world when it comes to culture and funding. I worked for municipal affairs and housing for 7 years and did a lot of programming and a lot of fund development. And then since coming to Kawartha Lakes in 2019, my portfolio has been pretty much the implementation of the cultural master plan and the establishment of the task force and the project for the cultural center feasibility study. I also do public art. The traffic control boxes that we are seeing wrapped every year is one of our fantastic temporary public art, and the like. Lots of community development, and I feel very lucky to be working on this project. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the help you're giving us as we get started on this, because it's greatly appreciated. Yeah. On the agenda, the next thing is actually next meeting. Before we actually tackle that, I have a question just about agenda setting and timelines for meetings. So what is the general rule that, as far as city committees, that you follow for that?
Well, there is a set agenda that is always set. And so that's why it had to be new business for introductions. That's why sometimes it seems, right? So there's always a set. But then under new business, that's where things are introduced, or they can also be introduced in correspondence or that part as well.
So just for clarification, because I understood that part.
Yeah.
Pardon me. If there is something that we'd like to see added to the agenda, we bring it, and the only way to do it is to have it added as new business at the time of the meeting?
No, go ahead. Councilor
I'm just looking for how you
Yeah,
operate.
absolutely. I mean, we will have that open dialogue, and we can add it in prior to the agenda. And then there's agenda review usually between the chairperson and our staff liaison. So those items could come from anyone sitting here saying, I would like to bring this as a discussion point, and it's put on the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to make sure everybody understands how they can sort of access things and you know, be a part of things.
The big guns have come into the room. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah O'Connell, one of the deputy clerks in the city clerk's office. We're just here to provide support to Donna for the task force meetings, and just wanted to be available for any questions.
Thank you very much, and thanks for helping us out today. Appreciate it. Okay, that answered my question, so thank you very much. And Eric?
One thing I found helpful, especially recently, and it happened on a different board, just the general rule of thumb of going through the chair period has always held me in really good stead. So when confused, if the emails, even if it's an email someone wanted to ask me or they wanted to ask each other, it's always helpful that the chair is aware of everything that's going on. You're kind of the common thread. And I think that'll be helpful to Donna too. If we always know that the question asked did in fact go through the chair, then the transparency piece is clear for the public.
Appreciate that. Yeah, very good. Any other questions before we look to Yes, Pat?
Yeah, when we're setting the agenda for the next meeting, if there are departments of municipal staff that we are going to want to pose questions to, how do we go about arranging that they're available to us?
Well, through clerks or through me, right?
Sarah?
So Donna will be preparing the agendas for the meetings and making sure they're posted within the required time that's necessary to satisfy public meeting requirements. As the agendas are crafted, then Donna can reach out to any departments that are necessary to inquire about staff representation at that point.
If I can add as well. So economic development, normally there would be more, like Rebecca would be here, Richard Hawley wanted to be here, James Smith, who has taken over for Jorg, because he retired, that's our manager of building and property. He wanted to be here, but so economic development right now is at the International Plowing Match in Bowling Green, just outside of Orangeville, because the International Plowing Match is coming here next year. So we're there saying, 2024, come our way. So that's why some of my staff, or like my coworkers, like economic development staff, isn't here, because they actually are holding down the fort at Bowling Green. And the same with our director and such. But normally there would be more staff here just as record of course, because they are, the work of the task force is intrinsic to the work that we are doing on the ground. With phase one, there was a technical advisory committee that was set up, and it had, I think it was 8 representatives. So we had legal, we had insurance and risk, we had realty services, we had asset management, we had building and property, economic development, archives, right? Because we do have a records management and archives under the clerks. That was 8. So, and that became sort of a supporting committee for the task force. Both the consultants would go through there to get feedback, to be able to provide to you, and also the task force could go through them to provide feedback to the consultant, or like to close the loop. And the discussion is to assemble that, again, to have that constant support from the municipality. So there, depending on the date that's set, there'll also be more lead time. There'll be probably a month or 3 week or whatever we decide lead time. So there should be more staff here for that one. Yeah.
Follow up, Pat?
Physically,
Yeah.
how often are we going to be able to meet? Other task force I've sat on have been at very minimum monthly. Are we able to get things going quickly to get everybody up to speed, set goals, so everybody has an idea of input into the direction for the next meeting?
Well, that's really, we have a minimum, like in the terms of reference, you'll see there's a minimum, we hold 3 meetings, but there's no maximum. So, there's an expectation that people meet, but we all know that everyone else also has full-time jobs, and, they'll like that too. So, but really, unless there's a procedural that I'm not aware of, it's really up to we have to meet a minimum of 3 times between now and 2024, the end of 20, but if we decide to meet 6, or if we decide to meet 9, we're good. Is that correct, Sarah?
Sarah?
Yes, Donna, that's correct. I always encourage when you're scheduling your meetings, when you're planning out your meeting schedule, to make sure we build in enough time so that agendas are posted to provide an adequate amount of notice, because they are public meetings. We want to make sure the information is public facing. Under the terms of reference, we have a minimum of 3 business days between calling of a meeting or publishing of a meeting and the meeting itself. But that's very much a minimum. So we want to make sure whatever schedule is set, that we build in that lead time to make sure that we can satisfy those requirements, make sure all of the information in the agendas are public facing. with an adequate amount of notice. Again, that 3 business days is a minimum. It's always recommended that we provide a little bit more than that, just to make sure we are providing the information public-facing.
Eric?
Mr. Chair, through you, I just wondered if we could set the next meeting date of October 25th at 2 o'clock and have on the agenda item and have the next 2 or 3 meetings perhaps as an agenda item for October 25th. And then people will have time to think about that. The 25th is just a date that I happen to agree with my calendar. I'm just throwing it out for efficiency that it's a date to throw out. There may be better dates. Yeah, exactly. There may be better dates for others. I just wanted to get to the, let's pick a date for the next one, and maybe at that meeting, the discussion of getting us through to the end of January, something like that. I think maybe the next meeting will helps what Pat Murphy's referring to. It'll be a busy meeting. We'll get chatting. We'll get into it and might be able to go, okay, so we need a meeting in 3 weeks, or we don't need a meeting for 4 or whatever. Because I just know with, like, you're pointing out your calendar with budget and everything coming up, it'll be probably best for us, I would think, to just find the first date. Would you agree with that? And I don't know that we can do much more than that at this stage. I can't. Would you agree?
I certainly, I mean, the basic requirement is pretty thin, so I'm pretty sure we would all agree that there's going to be a lot more than what the basic requirement is. Getting those established, I like the idea very much of getting some dates in order well ahead so that we can, but it's very important that we have specific important things to discuss and we know what they are, because I think for me anyways, having the specific homework to know what it is that I've got to be ready for is very, very important. So that kind of thing I think will help us. That idea that Eric just, whether it's October 25th or whatever date, to at that first meeting put an agenda item on that is specifically to lay out dates for meetings. Are people generally okay with that idea? I think that would be helpful to us because we can all come prepared with our calendars and make a point of fitting as many people as we can into the whole thing. Is that okay, Donna?
If we were to do a month, that would be the 16th, thereabouts. I have them, so interdepartmental, we have a scheduling assistant where I can see other people's calendars. Right. So for Director Hawley, Rebecca Mustard, who's the manager of economic development, and for James Smith, who's the manager of building and property. I was just like putting in some, so October 16th, that's a Monday. 17th or...
I'm out of the country that day.
Just one day?
I'm out of province as well.
The 19th? 25th? I love it. Yeah, no.
25th is floated as an idea, Eric?
4 again?
Just one thing I've noticed with other task forces and committees too, and this isn't in any other way than a reminder that with a 9-person committee, it'll be very, very difficult, and Zoom is an option. Yep. And that might have to be considered for each of us at some point to Zoom in if that's the only way we can participate, as opposed to email, it probably won't work out any, perfectly.
And I assume that's
everyone.
easy enough to arrange. Yeah, good. Okay, thank you.
2 to 4 on the 25th of October? 2 to 4? 25th of October, 2 to 4?
I'm on call that day as it's a deadline day for my organization, so I could participate but may have to leave if I get a call. Is that an issue?
If you've given notice, as far as I know, as long as we don't lose quorum, then you're fine.
It would just be like, I'd be able to leave and come back kind of thing. I just wanted to be transparent about that, so.
Okay. Lisa?
I'm not available. I have students that week.
Okay.
But I could try to rearrange and be on Zoom, but I can't commit.
Okay. Yeah, that's valid, that's fair. I can send everyone a calendar invite right now to get it in your calendar.
Do we need a specific motion to set a date for that meeting? No?
I think it's the call of the chair in the
Okay.
task, in the terms of
Well,
reference.
yeah, okay, so if you are okay with sending that out, the invitation for the 25th, and if we all come prepared with our calendars to look forward with the understanding that we're going to have to try to find some common ground. And like it's been pointed out, we're not going to find time where absolutely everybody can make it. That's just the reality of life. But we'll give it our best shot and try to make sure people are engaged as much as they can be. And certainly the Zoom thing will help us, I'm sure. So.
Okay. So it's been submitted. If you're able, like if you have the right calendar, whichever, if you can accept, then I know how many we have. Like I get the response. So you can accept, decline, or propose a new time. But I probably wouldn't suggest that one.
But don't.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else about the next meeting? Pat?
Yes, I would like to suggest that we finish a meeting with everybody understanding what the homework is for the next meeting.
Okay.
And so between now and our next meeting, maybe we can have a quick discussion about what we can all be doing ahead of time. I mentioned earlier that I think that one of the first steps is identifying a list of who all the potential participants are in using the facilities. If everyone can come prepared to add some names to a list, that would be helpful. I know our feasibility study has a long list already identified by the study, but I think if everybody gets the gears turning about who the potential users might be, that would be helpful to get down to work.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Laurie.
I would just add to that, one of the things that I will do is look at what the goals are of Phase 2 Task Force and then try and think of a work back, because we'll probably want to either go in order, what are we going to have accomplished by Christmas this year, in a sort of a schedule like that.
Yeah, I think the synopsis that was presented about the highlights rather than the full volume, I encourage anybody that's wanting to read through the whole thing, but some of it is not going to be really useful to us. But the conclusions are definitely what we're going to be using to move forward. So reviewing all the information there, which we haven't really done in depth in this short meeting, but that would be helpful. I took the liberty to photocopy some sheets that were put together by the Arts Council of the chronological events that have happened over the last 8 years. So I'll put them out for anybody who wants to take that home and kind of take a look at what the history of getting to today is. And I think it'll be helpful in moving forward.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Chair, through you to clerks, would that be correspondence? Or how would we get that into the minutes and share that with the public?
I'm wondering if the best course of action would be perhaps to have that document listed on the agenda as correspondence for the next meeting, so it can be part of the record for the meeting rather than circulated informally.
So, sorry, just a point of clarification. So correspondence for the October 25th meeting.
Correct.
Perfect.
So then I assume Pat can just submit that to you electronically, and then it will be attached then for everybody?
Yeah, it's nothing that's not available on the Kawartha Lakes Arts Council website.
Right.
It's just a,
We just want to keep everything together so that, you know, the public are totally aware of what information we're looking at, where it comes from, all that sort of thing. Tracy?
No, thank you, and that's exactly where I was just going to go with that, is that, you know, we set the agenda today to go through that introduction, and, you know, this is where we're going, and the next agenda that we can do is a fulsome discussion with different ones being added, and that correspondent does have to go through that capacity, so it is transparent.
Thank you, thank you. Any other discussion? Eric?
Just really quickly, I want to close with something that's a positive message I promised somebody I'd bring, and I hope it resonates in our hearts, because I had and often have a lot of chats with our Director of Human Services. Her name is Cheryl Faber, and as we're all very aware, the homeless situation and opioid crisis for our cities in Ontario it's a big deal. And we were talking about things, as we often have to, and she had a quote, and I said, could I borrow that for our first meeting of the Cultural Center, because it just seemed to resonate. And she said, don't let perfect be the enemy of our good. And I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful. We're a group of people that are real type A's and really passionate, and it's going to be amazing, and we're going to be striving for perfect, because that's what this table tends to do. I can just feel it, and I know those who I know that's the way we operate, you know. And I think that quote, don't let perfect be the enemy of our good, you know, we're going to do some really good things with this group, and they're going to unravel in time. They're going to reveal themselves as we move as a collective. I really believe that. So that was just something I had down. I hope you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. Well, I think this is a great start. It's nice to meet each other and know who we all are, and hopefully the public have some idea who we all are now too. So that's good. Thank you very much for all your help getting us going. And I guess I can call for an adjournment if there's someone that would like to put that on the table. Thank you, Christina. And I assume you don't need a seconder you do for an adjournment? Okay, and a seconder, Tracy, thank you. All those in favor of adjournment? Very rarely have I ever seen people not in favor of adjournment. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.